I found the drive on a Tuesday afternoon while sorting through Linda's jewelry box 3 months after the funeral. The box sat on her dresser where it had always been, rosewood with brass hinges, and I had avoided it the way you avoid certain drawers after someone dies. But the estate attorney needed documentation for a policy claim, and Linda had kept her insurance papers in odd places. The USB drive was smaller than my thumb, tucked beneath the velvet liner at the bottom of the box. No label, just black plastic and a silver connector. I held it between my fingers and felt the weight of something deliberate, something hidden with care. Linda had been meticulous about organization. She labeled everything. The absence of a label meant intention. I took it downstairs to my study and plugged it into my laptop. The drive contained a single folder. Inside were video files, hundreds of them, each named with a date and timestamp. The oldest was from 7 years ago. The most recent was dated 2 weeks before Linda died. I opened the first file. The footage was night vision green, grainy but clear enough. The angle looked down from above, probably from the bookshelf on Linda's side of the bedroom. It showed our bed. It showed me sleeping. The timestamp said 3:42 in the morning. I watched myself turn over, exhale, settle back into the pillow. The clip lasted 18 seconds. I sat very still for a moment. Then I opened another file, this one from 4 years ago. Same angle, same bed. Me sleeping on my back, mouth slightly open. 21 seconds. I opened a third. Same setup, different night. I clicked through a dozen more, all the same. Me sleeping, filmed in night vision, each clip between 15 seconds and 2 minutes long. My first thought was clinical. Linda must have been documenting my sleep apnea. I had been diagnosed 6 years ago, and the CPAP machine had helped, but Linda had always been anxious about it. She worked as a research librarian and approached problems through documentation. Filming me would have been consistent with her nature, proof for doctors, evidence for adjustments, but that theory held for maybe 30 seconds, because Linda would have told me. We had been married 23 years. She shared everything, sometimes to excess. If she had been worried enough to film me sleeping, she would have discussed it over breakfast. She would have shown me the footage and insisted we see a specialist. I closed the laptop and poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon. The house was quiet except for the furnace cycling on. Linda had died of an aneurysm in her office at the university library. No warning. She was reshelving medical journals when it happened. A colleague found her collapsed between the stacks. The doctor said it had been instant, that she felt nothing. I had believed that because I needed to. Now I sat in the house we had shared, holding a glass I had not sipped from, and I understood that my wife had kept a secret. I reopened the laptop and began to work through the files systematically. I am a surgeon. I approach problems with structure. I created a spreadsheet and logged each video by date, duration, and any notable details. The work took me past midnight. By the time I finished, I had documented 217 clips spanning 7 years. The pattern was irregular. Sometimes weeks would pass with no new videos. Other times there would be 3 or 4 in a single week. Most of the footage was unremarkable. Me sleeping. Occasional movement, nothing unusual. But as I worked deeper into the archive, I began to notice inconsistencies. The first was a video dated 18 months ago. The angle was identical. The night vision was the same. But the room was not our bedroom. The headboard was different, lower and darker. The wall behind the bed had a window where ours had a framed print. I paused the video and studied the frame. The quality was poor, but I could make out details. A hotel room, perhaps, or someone else's house. I found 3 more videos filmed in that same unfamiliar room, all within a 2-week span. Then the footage returned to our bedroom. The second inconsistency was harder to define, but more unsettling. In several clips I looked different, older. The video dates said they were from 5 years ago, but the version of me on screen had more gray at the temples than I had then. I pulled up a photo from that same year. I compared my hairline, the depth of the lines around my eyes. The differences were subtle but present. In the videos, I looked closer to how I appeared now, not how I had looked then. I considered explanations, video compression artifacts, poor lighting, memory playing tricks. but I have spent my career interpreting images, reading scans and surgical footage. I trust my eyes. Something was wrong. By 2 in the morning, I had identified 7 videos that did not fit, 7 clips where the room was unfamiliar, or I looked incorrectly aged, or both. I saved those files to a separate folder and titled it Anomalies. Then I shut down the laptop and went upstairs. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and looked at the bookshelf where the camera would have been. There was no camera there now, just books and a small clock and a framed photo of Linda and me in front of the lake house. I did not sleep that night. The next morning I called my brother-in-law, Martin. He had been Linda's only sibling, and they had been close. If anyone knew about secrets she kept, it would be him. I framed it carefully. I told him I was going through Linda's things and found some files I did not understand. Did Linda ever mention filming anything at home? A project, maybe. Research for something. Martin sounded tired. He had taken Linda's death harder than he showed. He said no, not that he knew of. Linda had been private about her habits, but she had always been interested in sleep research. She had mentioned it once or twice, articles. She had read, studies about dream cycles. Maybe it related to that. I thanked him and hung up. The call confirmed nothing, but it gave me a direction. If Linda had been researching sleep, there would be records. She kept everything, notes, bookmarks, printouts. I went back to her study, a small room off the kitchen where she kept her work materials. Her desk was neat, organized by subject. I searched through her files, medical journals, library science articles, nothing about sleep studies, nothing about surveillance. Her laptop was still on the desk. I opened it and entered her password, the name of the street we had lived on when we first met. Her browser history went back months. I filtered by keywords: sleep, dreams, video, surveillance. The results were sparse. A few articles about insomnia, one research paper on REM behavior disorder, nothing that explained the footage. Then I checked her cloud storage. Linda had used it for work files, backing up research and cataloging projects. I logged in and searched for video files. The account returned one result, a folder labeled Archive. Inside were 12 video files. I downloaded them and opened the first. Night vision, same angle, me sleeping. But the date was 9 years ago, 2 years before the oldest video on the USB drive. I checked the rest of the files in the cloud folder. All of them predated the USB archive. All of them showed me sleeping. She had been filming me for at least 9 years, possibly longer. I sat back and considered what this meant. Linda had not been documenting my sleep apnea. This had started before my diagnosis. This was something else. Compulsion, obsession, a need I had never suspected she had. My wife had filmed me sleeping for nearly a decade, and I had never known. I thought about the inconsistencies, the unfamiliar rooms, the wrong ages. I opened the anomaly folder and reviewed those 7 clips again, the dates, the details. I noticed something I had missed before. In 3 of the videos, the bedside table held objects that were not ours. A lamp with a green shade, a stack of hardcover books, small things easy to overlook. But I had been in our bedroom for 23 years. I knew what belonged. A possibility formed, uncomfortable, strange, but logical. What if Linda had not been filming me? What if she had been filming someone who looked like me? I tested the idea. I pulled up a photo of myself from 8 years ago and compared it to a clip from that same period. The resemblance was exact, down to the scar on my left shoulder from a skiing accident. I tried another. Same result. The person in the videos was me. But the settings were sometimes wrong, and the aging did not match the timeline. There was one explanation I had not considered. What if the dates were incorrect? What if Linda had mislabeled the files, accidentally or intentionally? If the videos filmed in unfamiliar rooms were more recent than their timestamp suggested, that would explain the older appearance. If the footage showing me looking younger was actually older than labeled, that would resolve the discrepancy. But Linda did not make mistakes like that, and mislabeling hundreds of files across years seemed implausible. I returned to the master bedroom and searched it methodically. I checked behind the bookshelf, inside the closet, under the bed. I was looking for a camera, for any equipment Linda might have used. I found nothing. I examined the ceiling, the smoke detector, the air vent. Still nothing. If she had filmed me from above, the camera was gone now, removed before her death or never permanently installed. I expanded my search to the rest of the house. I checked the guest room, my study, the basement. I found no surveillance equipment, no hidden cameras, no tripods or mounts, nothing to indicate Linda had ever filmed anything. On Thursday, I called the university and asked to speak with Linda's supervisor. I identified myself and explained I was settling her affairs. I asked if Linda had been working on any special projects in the months before she died. Research initiatives, collaborations, anything unusual. The supervisor, a woman named Dr. Kellen, said no. Linda had been working on a digitization project for the medical archives, routine work. She had been reliable and thorough, but nothing out of the ordinary. Dr. Kellen paused, then asked if everything was all right. I told her it was. I thanked her and ended the call. I spent the rest of Thursday reviewing the footage again. I made notes on every clip. I marked the ones that felt wrong and tried to identify patterns. The unfamiliar rooms appeared in videos dated between 14 and 18 months ago. The age discrepancies were scattered, no clear pattern. I isolated 3 clips where I thought I could identify the location of the unfamiliar room. The window behind the bed had curtains with a geometric pattern. The headboard was a dark wood, possibly walnut. The wall was painted a soft gray. I did not recognize the room, but it looked like a hotel. The setup was impersonal, clean, generic. I considered calling hotels in the area, asking if they kept records of guests from 18 months ago, if they had security footage showing who had accessed certain rooms. The idea was absurd. I had no basis for the request, no evidence of wrongdoing, just a collection of videos my dead wife had made. Friday morning, I went into the hospital for my shift. I'd taken leave after Linda's death, but I'd been back for 6 weeks now. Work helped. It imposed structure. During surgery, there's no room for distraction. You focus on the task. You solve the problem in front of you. That afternoon, I performed a bypass on a man in his 60s. The procedure went smoothly. Afterward, I sat in the surgeon's lounge and drank bad coffee and tried to remember if Linda had ever mentioned filming anything, recording something. I came up empty. One of the nurses, a woman named Diane, who had worked with me for a decade, sat down across from me. She asked how I was doing. I told her I was managing. She nodded and said Linda had been a good person. I agreed. Diane hesitated, then said she had run into Linda about a year before the aneurysm. Linda had been at a hotel downtown, the one near the convention center. Diane had been there for a conference. She said Linda had seemed surprised to see her, almost flustered. Diane had asked what she was doing there, and Linda had said something vague about a work event. Diane had not thought much of it at the time. I thanked her and asked which hotel. She told me. I finished my coffee and left. The hotel was a mid-tier chain, the kind used for conferences and business travel. I drove there after my shift and walked into the lobby. I approached the front desk and told the clerk I was trying to confirm whether my wife had stayed there in the past. I gave Linda's name and approximate dates, a range covering 18 months ago. The clerk checked the system and said she did not see any reservations under that name. I thanked her and walked to the parking lot. I sat in my car and thought about what Diane had said. Linda at a hotel, flustered, vague. Linda had not traveled for work. Her job did not require it. If she had been at that hotel, it was for something else, someone else. The idea settled in my chest like a weight, an affair. The obvious explanation I had been avoiding. Linda had been meeting someone. She had filmed them sleeping, someone who looked like me. Or she had filmed me as a reference, a comparison. Or I was assembling a narrative from fragments that did not fit. I drove home and opened the laptop. I went through the videos one more time. I studied the clips from the unfamiliar room. I paused on a frame that showed part of a bedside table, the lamp with the green shade. Next to it, a receipt or note just visible at the edge. I zoomed in as much as the resolution allowed. I could not read the text, but I could see the hotel logo. It matched the chain Diane had mentioned. Linda had been at that hotel. She had filmed someone sleeping there, someone who looked like me. The timeline aligned with the video dates, 14 to 18 months ago, the same period Diane had seen her. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark study. I tried to imagine Linda having an affair. It did not fit. She had been content, steady, reliable. We had been happy. Or I had thought we were. But the evidence was there. Hidden footage, a hotel room, behavior she had kept secret. On Saturday, I called a private investigator. I found him through a colleague who had used his services during a malpractice case. The investigator's name was Paul. He met me at a coffee shop downtown. I explained the situation carefully. I showed him the videos on my laptop. I told him about the inconsistencies, the hotel, the dates. I asked if he could find out who Linda had been seeing, if anyone, and why she had been at that hotel. Paul watched the clips without comment. When I finished, he asked if I was sure I wanted to know. I told him I needed to. He said it would take time. He would start by checking the hotel records, cross-referencing Linda's name and any aliases she might have used. He would look into her finances, see if there were unexplained charges. He asked if I had access to her credit card statements. I did. I gave him copies. He called me 3 days later. He said Linda had paid for 2 rooms at that hotel over a 6-week period 18 months ago. The charges were small, 1 or 2 nights each time. He had spoken with a clerk who remembered Linda vaguely. She had checked in alone each time and specified a particular room type, one with a view of the parking lot. The clerk had thought it was odd, but not worth noting. Paul asked if I wanted him to continue. I said yes. He said he would reach out to former hotel staff, see if anyone remembered Linda bringing someone to the room. He would check traffic cameras near the hotel, see if her car appeared on the relevant dates. 2 weeks passed. I went to work. I performed surgeries. I came home to the empty house and reheated dinners and sat in the study reviewing Linda's footage. I had watched each video so many times I could recite the timestamps. I knew which clips showed me shifting positions, which showed me waking briefly, which showed me motionless for the full duration. I became familiar with my own sleeping self in a way that felt invasive and strange. Paul called on a Wednesday evening. He said he had found something, but it was not what I expected. Linda had not brought anyone to the hotel. The staff he spoke with confirmed she had always arrived alone, stayed briefly, and left. No visitors, no one meeting her. He had pulled footage from traffic cameras near the hotel on 2 of the dates Linda had checked in. Both times, her car was the only one she drove. No one else was in the vehicle. I asked what she had been doing there. Paul said he did not know, but he had checked her credit card statements more closely. Around the same time as the hotel stays, Linda had made several purchases from medical supply stores, cameras, night vision equipment, a small tripod. She had also bought software for video editing and file management. Everything pointed to Linda setting up equipment herself, filming something, and then taking it down. I asked why she would do that. Paul was quiet for a moment. Then he said it depended on what she was filming. If she'd been testing equipment, practicing angles, that might explain it. But if she'd been filming someone else, someone who looked like me, then the answer was darker. He asked if Linda had any history of obsessive behavior. I told him no, not that I knew of. Paul said he would keep digging, but he wanted my permission to access Linda's medical records. I hesitated. That felt like a violation, but I agreed. 2 days later, he called again. Linda had been seeing a psychiatrist for 3 years before her death. The visits were monthly, paid for in cash, no insurance claims, no paper trail except the psychiatrist's appointment logs, which Paul had obtained through a contact. I asked what the visits were for. Paul said doctor-patient confidentiality meant the psychiatrist would not talk, even with Linda deceased, but he had a colleague who might be able to persuade the doctor to share limited information. I told him to try. The psychiatrist's name was Dr. Brennan. Paul arranged a meeting. I went to her office on a gray afternoon, the kind of day where the sky feels close and the light is thin. Dr. Brennan was older, maybe 60, with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. She offered condolences for Linda's death. Then she told me she could not discuss Linda's treatment in detail, but she could confirm Linda had been struggling with intrusive thoughts related to surveillance and control. I asked what that meant. Dr. Brennan chose her words carefully. She said Linda had been fixated on the idea of documenting behaviors to ensure they were real. She had questioned her perceptions, doubted her memories. The filming had been a way to create proof, to anchor herself to something observable. It was not about me specifically. It was about Linda's need for evidence. I asked why she had filmed someone else, someone at the hotel. Dr. Brennan paused. Then she said Linda had not filmed someone else. She had filmed me. But Linda had used the hotel as a neutral space to test whether her perception of me at home was consistent with her perception of me elsewhere. She had wanted to compare environments, see if I behaved differently, if she was missing something. I told Dr. Brennan I had been at home during those nights. The timestamps proved it. Dr. Brennan nodded. She said Linda had been aware of the inconsistencies. That had been part of her struggle. She could not reconcile the footage with the timeline. She had believed the videos showed me, but she also knew logically that they could not. Dr. Brennan said Linda had been working through a delusional belief structure, one that caused significant distress. I asked why Linda had never told me. Dr. Brennan said shame was common in cases like this. Linda had not wanted to burden me. She had been trying to manage it privately, through therapy and documentation. The filming had been a compulsion, not a choice. I thanked Dr. Brennan and left. I sat in my car for a long time before driving home. When I arrived, I went directly to the study and opened the laptop. I looked at the videos again. I saw them differently now, not as evidence of betrayal, but as evidence of Linda's pain. She had been documenting me not because I was the problem, but because she needed proof that I was real, that we were real, that her perceptions could be trusted. The clips from the hotel were not of someone else. They were reconstructions, attempts to recreate our bedroom in a different space, to see if the results matched. Linda had been trying to solve a puzzle that existed only in her mind. I thought about the inconsistencies, the wrong ages, the mismatched timelines. Linda had labeled the files based on when she believed the footage was taken, not when it was actually filmed. Her perception of time had been distorted, her memory unreliable. She had been living in a version of reality that did not align with mine. I spent the weekend going through the rest of her things. I found notebooks in her study, pages of handwritten notes trying to make sense of the videos. She had drawn timelines, marked discrepancies, written questions to herself. Why does he look older? Is this the same room? Did I film this or imagine it? The notes were meticulous and desperate. She had been trying to fix something unfixable. On Monday, I called Martin. I told him what I had learned. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said Linda had mentioned feeling confused sometimes, doubting things she knew were true. He had thought it was stress from work. He had not realized it was more serious. He asked if I was angry with her for not telling me. I said no. I was sad. That evening, I deleted the videos. All of them. The ones from the USB drive, the ones from the cloud, the copies I had made. I did not need them. They were Linda's pain, not mine. Keeping them felt like preserving something that should be let go. I kept the jewelry box, the rosewood one with brass hinges. I put it back on her dresser where it had always been. I did not look inside again. Months later, I thought about what Linda had been trying to do. She had been building a record, trying to prove something to herself, but the harder she looked, the more fragmented the truth became. In the end, the only thing she documented was her own unraveling. I think about that sometimes when I'm alone in the house, the silence Linda left behind, the parts of her I never knew. I do not blame her for the secret. We all carry things we cannot share. Some of them are too strange, too tangled to explain. Linda had been fighting a battle I could not see, and she had done it quietly, without asking for help. I've stopped searching for explanations. The footage is gone. The questions remain, but they matter less now. What matters is that Linda had been suffering, and I had not known. That is the betrayal, the real one, not hers, mine. I should have noticed. I should have asked better questions. I should have seen the signs. But I did not. And now she is gone, and all I have is the memory of her careful hands labeling files, organizing evidence, trying to make sense of a world that kept shifting beneath her. She had wanted proof. She had wanted certainty. In the end, all she got was more confusion. I think that is what keeps me awake some nights. Not the footage itself, but the idea that Linda had been so alone in her struggle. I had been sleeping through it, literally and figuratively. And when I finally found the drive, it was too late to help. I wish I could go back. I wish I could tell her it was all right, that her perceptions were valid even when they felt broken. I wish I could say I understood. But I cannot. So instead, I keep the jewelry box, and I remember Linda as she was before the unraveling. Smart, kind, careful. A woman who loved order and precision and truth. A woman who got lost trying to document it all. And I go on. I work. I come home. I sleep in the bed where she once filmed me. And I do not think about the camera that is not there anymore. I think about Linda. And I let that be enough.